tales for dark nights.
Want to make sure you never miss a Chilling Tales for Dark Nights video again? Be sure to subscribe and hit that bell to turn on notifications. This episode of Chilling Tales for Dark Nights is brought to you by Fume. The bad habit business is booming, folks. Once everyone realizes how unhealthy a certain habit is, the market produces alternatives. And have you noticed the pattern? The alternatives are unhealthy too. They were anyway, until a certain company came along and put an end to this vicious cycle. Our good friends at Fume. Fume is an award-winning flavored air device designed to help you replace your bad habit with a harmless one. No vapor, no electronics, no chemicals, just natural, delicious flavors. Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and you can be the next success story. For a limited time, use my code CHILLING to get a free gift with your Journey Pack. Head to tryfume.com. That's tryfum.com and use the code CHILLING to get a free gift with your order today. It's time to turn off the lights and turn on the dark.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.
Good evening, listener. You're listening to Chilling Tales for Dark Nights. On tonight's edition, we invite you to leave behind your safe reality and descend with us into the frightening depths of the most terrifying imaginations with 2 audio adaptations of frightening fiction about soul survivors and hungry habitats. I'm your host, Steve Taylor, and tonight I'll be your guide as we traverse the dimly lit corridors of your darkest dreams. Joining us tonight to help bring to life the frightening fiction of Gray Walker and Shane H. Sellers, our voice talents Kevin Barbare and Nick Goroff. Now, get your ticket ready, take your seat in our theater of the minds, and brace yourself. It's time to turn off the lights and turn on the dark. Our first tale this evening is written by Gray Walker and is performed by Kevin Barbare. A man in a small backwoods town in Alabama is forced to contend with an event that has left him as the only survivor and turned the residents thereof into hideous creatures enacting the will of an unknown cosmic entity. Now, without further ado, I present to you Shades.
Jackie West glanced between the bars and boards on his windows, seeing the sky redden. He set about taking inventory of everything in the one-room cabin. Fresh light bulbs? Check. Radio? Check. Animal traps under the windows? Check. Medical supplies? Check. Guns? Check. He emphasized the last with a satisfying pull on the slide of his shotgun, checking the chambers of his revolver, then sat in the chair facing the door and, per his new routine, he waited. He began to ponder what had happened for it to come to this. He thought back to the first eclipse 6 months before. It had been a regular day in the small town of Red Leaf, Alabama. Town might have been too generous. It was little more than a small collection of houses, shops, and a tiny police station connected by a crumbling road running through it. One would need to go well out of their way to get here. Jackie had gone into town to purchase more hunting supplies for the oncoming winter and exchange small talk with the kindly store clerk, Roger Orson. The clerk had asked Jackie if he'd heard the news about the eclipse that was set to occur. Jackie hadn't, so Roger advised that he stay inside when it began to get dark. According to the papers, it was set to be a rather long eclipse, lasting at least 5 hours. The shades had appeared soon after the eclipse came. It had cast an odd, dark red glow over the town. Jackie had gotten back to his cabin 1.5 miles away from the town proper, only to find Red Leaf beset by a host of living shadows. Before long, screams erupted from the homes, followed by ghastly, inhuman screeches, the sounds of vehicles being destroyed, and ghoulish laughter. His poor townsfolk had been claimed by the eclipse. Jackie's focus snapped back to the present when the radio began to buzz with static. Soon enough, a chorus of distorted, fiendish words began. Whether he was a paragon of willpower or a shameless coward, he couldn't say, but all he knew was that he never opened up, pulsed like veins, and seemed to stretch to the sky. The one on the right carried a pickaxe, the one on the left held a claw hammer, and the middle one held a hatchet. They all grinned madly at him, though even now he wasn't sure if they were grinning because of the curse or because of how disfigured their faces were at this point. Outside, the moon gazed down on Red Leaf, having taken on the shape of a lidless scarlet eye with a colossal black pupil. It glowered at Jackie, causing horrific images to flash through his mind. He was nearly taken off his guard as the intruders began their assault. The middle shade charged at Jackie in an attempt to swing the hatchet, only for Jackie to blow its leg off with a blast from his shotgun. Blood sprayed everywhere, coating the foyer in a grisly shower of vermilion. It showed no pain, just continued to try and stand on the remaining leg, whereupon Jackie pulled back the slide, ejecting the shell, and shot it in the head. The veins it was covered in seemed to absorb its corpse with a horrid slurping sound. The other two attempted to do the same as their fallen compatriot, Jackie just barely dodging the pickaxe swinging for him as it lodged itself in the wall. He capitalized on this by pumping the shotgun again and firing at the shade's head. Then the monster with the hammer rushed at him, receiving the same treatment. Their ocular puppeteer in the sky slurped them back up. That was when Jackie heard the chainsaw. He whirled about in horror at the sound of the tool at one of the rear windows. Then he saw the tool cut through the boards. Swiveling his head from his door to the window, he tried to keep himself calm, despite knowing that at any moment he could receive another ambush at the door. He was just hoping that the shade's entry through the window would have the results he was hoping for. Once the boards were cut open, the shade, a hulking brute of a man, stepped through. Before it could charge at him with the saw, it was halted by one of the bear traps which had bitten into its ankle. Without hesitation, it began to saw away at the leg, but Jackie stopped it with a shot in the chest, then the head. More shades began appearing, all bearing makeshift weapons and pierced with the same veins as their predecessors, and all receiving the same treatment from his weapon. Now they were getting more aggressive. After killing at least 10 more, he aimed for another, swinging a large plank of wood, only to hear it click. The shade swung the plank into Jackie's left shin. He cried out in pain, but frantically dodged as it tried to bring it down for a finishing strike. Jackie grabbed the hatchet one of the first three had been carrying, then slashed at the veins. An enraged roar sounded from the sky, though whether it was because of control over its puppet being severed or from pain, Jackie couldn't tell. Either way, it seemed to shake the confidence of the being somewhat, as the shades suddenly ceased their siege of the cabin. Jackie stared out at them, confused. He still kept his distance from the red beams of moonlight. Then something new happened. A figure descended from the sky. The shades all parted, then knelt before it. From a distance, it looked like a man. As it approached, however, Jackie could see the sheer inhumanity of the thing. It too had veins sticking out of it, but unlike the shades, it only had one vein attached to the moon. Furthermore, all of the veins seemed to run from it into the shades. The multitude of eyes that coated its sexless, nude figure all resembled the moon. And they all turned their gaze on Jackie before the images raced through his mind again. Then it began addressing him.
"Return to us what is ours, thief."
It spoke into his mind with soft yet vicious authority.
"Give to us the sanguine eye, what you have taken, and we shall yet allow you to retain your will. We will let you take the place of this shade as our seer. There is no greater honor or pleasure to be found. All you need to do is give us our rightful property."
For an appalling moment, Jackie thought the offer over. Then that moment passed as he saw the moon beginning to move out of the eclipse. It was getting desperate. It was running out of time, so it had resorted to bargaining with him. He responded by removing his revolver, aiming at the seer and firing at one of the eyes on its torso. It burst open with a cascade of blood and other fluids. The seer clutched at the remains of the optical organ in pain, letting out a howl of agony followed by fury. It pointed a finger at Jackie. Then all of the shades leaped to their feet and charged at the cabin. Jackie began counting the seconds. Just as the shades entered the cabin and one was about to bring a lead pipe down on his head, the red light from the moon vanished, along with the shades and their seer. Sunlight bathed the town of Redleaf, and Jackie sighed as he lay down, then groaned as he remembered the blow to his leg. Once he had bandaged his leg, which was thankfully not broken, Jackie headed into the cellar, seated himself at his desk, and took the book out. The design of the hateful scarlet eye on the cover watched him, cursed him. He flipped to the pages with diagrams of an eclipse. He knew he was responsible for all of this. If he had just left that damn book alone, he wouldn't have been possessed by the knowledge of what to say to call down the sanguine eclipse, as the book referred to it. This was his penance, staying in Redleaf, surviving the attacks by his former neighbors. The force behind this book, the sanguine eye, made no attempt to leave town. Whatever it wanted, it would be incomplete without him. Without the one who summoned the shades, the collection was incomplete. What's more, it was getting desperate, and he thought he knew why. The book spoke of an event that had always occurred within a year of the eclipse, the azure sun. Evidently, it was the equal and opposite reaction to the sanguine eclipse, a force that would cleanse the world of its doings. As long as he drew breath, he was going to make sure the shades and their master stayed confined to Redleaf. If he could no longer defend the cabin before the azure sun, he would burn it down with himself and the book inside. He owed his neighbors that much.
This episode of Chilling Tales for Dark Nights is brought to you by Fume. Habits, well, they're just a part of life. It's inevitable. Most of what we do is out of habit. Everything from exercise to personal hygiene to filling our lungs with toxic carcinogenic gas. To be a human being is to treat yourself like an ambulatory toxic waste facility. Now, I'm not suggesting that you give up any of those habits per se, but the really bad ones, why not switch it up? It's easy. With our friends at Fume, your lungs will thank you. Fume is an award-winning flavored air device that lets you indulge the habit without treating yourself like a walking biohazard bin. No vapor, no harmful chemicals, and no batteries to charge. Just natural, delicious flavors and all that guilt lifted right off your shoulders. Doesn't that sound refreshing? I've got one myself, and I just love this thing. It's made of nicely polished wood and feels great in my hand. It's fun to fidget with. I've got some flavor recommendations, if I may. Try the crisp mint and orange vanilla, my personal favorites. Fume is backed by doctors in the U.S. and continuously invests in third-party studies to ensure the safety of their products. I'm no doctor myself, but I'm willing to go out on a limb here, and I challenge anyone to dispute me on this. Air is healthy. Fact check, true. Fume has served over 300,000 customers, and you could be the next success story. For a limited time, use my code CHILLING to get a free gift with your Journey Pack. Head to tryfume.com. That's tryfum.com and use code CHILLING to get a free gift with your order today. Thanks for your support and for supporting our valuable sponsors. I hope you enjoyed Shades, as written by Gray Walker and performed by Kevin Barbare. Our second tale of the evening is written by Shane H. Sellers and performed by Nick Goroff. In it, a news crew's stakeout turns into a horrific encounter when they enter a seedy motel room in pursuit of the truth. Let's just say something is hungry for more than a story. Now, without further ado, I present to you Eupepsia Sweets.
As a journalist on assignment, I found myself perched inside an unmarked van, concealed in the shadows of a dimly lit street. My heart raced with anticipation. The night air was filled with suspense. Our news crew had received a tip that Thaddeus Jones, the city commissioner, was about to make a secretive visit to a seedy motel, and we were determined to uncover the truth. Thaddeus was a figure of supposed moral rectitude, making his bones in the city as an incorruptible leader. But I knew that was all bullshit. Thaddeus was just another money-grubbing politician painted up as the next holy revival. He'd done some good reform work in the city prior to his election, but just like all politicians, money talks, and power is absolute. Ian, my camera operator, adjusted the lens, ensuring we would capture every incriminating moment. The van's interior was bathed in the glow of multiple screens displaying the motel's entrance from various angles. The night was still, broken only by the occasional distant hum of passing cars. Time seemed to slow as we watched and waited, the tension in the van almost palpable. Our eyes remained fixed on the motel's entrance, where the flickering neon sign cast an eerie crimson hue. Eupepsia Sweets? What kind of name is that for a motel? Ian muttered. A more fitting name would be Shipbag Sweets, I replied, eliciting a giggle from Karen. Then it happened. A sleek black sedan pulled up and my heart skipped a beat. The city commissioner stepped out, looking around nervously, his face partially obscured by the brim of his fedora. And beside him, a young woman, draped in a shimmering gown, a stark contrast to the motel's seedy facade. "That's a high-class escort if I've ever seen one," Ian exclaimed. "We need more proof," I replied. "I'm pretty sure he's not helping her study for school," Karen quipped. "Shh, not so loud," I said, my fingers jotting down the time and details. Ian quietly refocused the camera as the city commissioner and the escort disappeared into the motel's dimly lit entrance. As we continued to observe, I knew that this night held the potential to unravel a scandal that could rock this city. My duty as a journalist was clear: to expose the truth, regardless of the consequences. We exited the van, making our way across the dark parking lot and to the door Thaddeus had entered. Ian held the camera steady as Karen fiddled with the audio equipment, ensuring we captured every damning word and sound. I took a deep breath and knocked on the door, my knuckles rapping lightly against the worn wood. The door creaked open, revealing the dimly lit interior of the motel room. The scene that met my eyes was perplexing. The room was empty, save for a single chair in the center and a flickering television in the corner. The lights were dim, casting eerie shadows across the peeling wallpaper. "Did we get the wrong room?" Ian whispered, his voice trembling. I looked at the adjacent room that was boarded over with plywood and then to an empty lot. "No, this has to be it." Just as confusion began to set in, a strange guttural grunt came from what could only be the bathroom in the back. Ian focused the camera light, revealing a shimmering gown lying on the floor in a pool of viscous liquid. "Ew, that'll leave a stain," Karen quipped. We entered the room silently. The air inside hot, humid, and smelling of rancid meat. The floor made wet squishing sounds as we walked across the threshold. A closer inspection of the walls revealed the same viscous liquid that was on the escort's gown. Karen's face went pale as she brought a hand to her mouth and began to dry heave. "Is that fucking jizz?" Ian exclaimed. "Shh," I hissed, making my way to the bathroom door, my right hand clasping the knob and slowly turning. I looked back at Ian, who gave a nod of confirmation, while Karen raised the boom mic over my head. With my left hand, I counted. 3, 2, 1. I jerked the bathroom door open, revealing a large, fleshy orifice covered in thick mucus embedded in the wall where the shower was. We stood there stunned for a moment, our eyes shifting down to a pink gelatinous mixture of viscera that contained the half-dissolved body of Thaddeus Jones. In the sink, a blonde wig floated in a pool of blood that seeped out onto the tile floor below. Instinctually, I slammed the door shut, backing away from the horrific sight. "Back up!" I yelled, my voice trembling as I grabbed Ian and Karen by their arms, pulling them away from the bathroom door. We stumbled backward toward the entrance, a sense of dread quickly washing over us. Ian rushed to the front door, trying to pry it open with no avail. Suddenly, the walls undulated and pulsated like a living, breathing organism. The chair in the center started to warp and contort into a gaping cavity, the cushion turning into a sickly epidermis. The television screen flickered to life, showing distorted images of the Thaddeus and the woman, their faces twisted in agony in an array of analog hues. "What the fuck is happening?" Karen shouted, her face pale with terror. "I don't know, but we need to get out of here," Ian shouted. Panic set in as the room's pulsations quickened, and the walls began to change into large red muscles. A colossal, fleshy polyp emerged from the corner of the room where Ian was standing. Resembling a bizarre, meaty sprinkler system, this peculiar growth unleashed a powerful jet of thick, translucent fluid that showered Ian. In the midst of this horrifying spectacle, Ian's agonized screams filled the room as he collapsed to his knees, his exposed flesh sizzling and deteriorating due to the corrosive enzyme. Both Karen and I watched in horror as his skin melted away to expose the muscle and bone underneath. In a matter of seconds, he was reduced to a steaming pile of crimson goo. The walls continued to pulsate, and the chair opened like a monstrous maw, revealing a set of large, flattened sizes that merged into a sinister smile. Desperation surged through me as I frantically searched for an escape. There had to be a way out of this nightmare. The room's grotesque transformation continued, with the walls closing in and the sinister meat chair threatening to engulf me entirely. Karen darted past me, sprinting towards a small air conditioning unit affixed to the wall. With every ounce of her strength, she battered the unit with the boom mic. Fragments of plastic clattered to the floor as the unit shifted, revealing the neon glow of the sign outside. Using the television as a makeshift platform, Karen stepped up, delivering 2 more forceful blows until the unit broke free and crashed down outside. She glanced back at me, her face brimming with excitement as if to convey, "We're free!" But then, in an instant, as if sinking into quicksand, Karen's legs vanished through the leathery skin of the television set. She recoiled in terror, losing her balance and toppling into the chair below. The chair's gaping mouth enveloped her head and shoulders, biting down with a sickening crunch. Then, in a nightmarish tableau reminiscent of Lady and the Tramp, the television and chair commenced feasting upon Karen's convulsing body. In a final, desperate act, I sprinted past Karen and reached the television stand. With determination, I leaped toward the open window above, inadvertently cutting myself on the sharp aluminum window seal in the process. Gasping for breath, I staggered out and tumbled to the pavement below. The opening promptly sealed itself with a thin piece of flesh, resembling an eyelid. I managed to limp to the van, escaping from the motel and leaving behind the nightmarish room and its unspeakable horrors. I tried to explain the chilling phenomena to anyone that would listen, but how do you even begin to explain something like that? I lived through it, and sometimes I question the sanity of it. The police went to the address I gave them, finding nothing but a cement slab from a demolition project completed 5 years ago. The news of Thaddeus Jones's disappearance sent shockwaves through the community. Speculation and rumors ran rampant, and yet I couldn't bring myself to divulge the horrifying truth we had witnessed. Instead, I fabricated a story about our pursuit of leads that had ultimately led to a dead end, sparing the public from the gruesome reality. I remained a person of interest for the disappearance of 4 people. The police interrogated me, my colleagues shunned me, family stopped calling, and finally I lost my job as a journalist. The memories of that night and the haunting visages of Ian and Karen's gruesome fates tormented me incessantly. I couldn't shake the eerie sensation that the room, whatever evil force it harbored, still lurked somewhere, biding its time to claim more victims. As years passed, I struggled with post-traumatic distress. Eupepsia sweets had become an indelible stain on my soul. That night I awake in terror, my sheets soaked in sweat as I hear sinew stretching and blood pumping. I feel the heat of the room as the smell of rotting meat clings to my nostrils. Panic, I reached for my bedside lamp, clicking the light on to reveal my bedroom. Dreams continue to plague me, and I dread the thought of sleeping. Last night was no different. The nightmares, the cold sweat, all the same. Except the sheets were sticky this time, and my skin was a deep red rash.
I hope you enjoyed Eupepsia Sweets, as written by Shane H. Sellers and performed by Nick Goroff. On to our shows. Longtime resident Otis Gyrie has his very own show here on our network, Scary Stories Told in the Dark, which you can hear every Sunday night. We also have Eric Peabody's Horror Hill, a podcast dedicated to some of our deeper and darker tales. We hope you check him out. And Drew Blood's Dark Tales airs Fridays, featuring some southern, down-home horror. And don't forget to check out the Fear from the Heartland archives, featuring more than 120 episodes. Well, friends, our weekly descent into the depths has just about come to a close. But before we go, I'd like to take a moment to thank you for joining us for tonight, and remind you to take a moment to stop by our iTunes page and leave Chilling Tales for Dark Nights a 5-star review and a kind word. And follow us on Facebook, X, and Instagram if you haven't already. And of course, subscribe to us on YouTube, where you can find an archive of our work going back to 2012. And consider signing up as a patron at our website, chillingtalesfordarknights.com, to show your support and get all of our content ad-free. I'm your host of the evening, Steve Taylor, and it's been a pleasure. Tune in again next week when we once again turn off the lights and turn on the dark. Sweet dreams, listener. Sweet dreams.
Chilling Tales for Dark Nights.